Good evening. I'm the storyteller here to guide you through deadly love horror tales. Before we start, please subscribe and like the video. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is in the comments. When you're ready, get comfortable and relax. Episode 1. The Last Night Shift at St. Mary's Hospital. They say the night shift in a hospital is the quietest time. Fewer voices, fewer footsteps. Only the monitors beep, steady, every few seconds, or the wind hissing through the cracks of the hallway windows. I had worked the night shift at St. Mary's for over 8 years, and that was true, most of the time. But no one tells you that, when the darkness swallows an entire stretch of white hallway, it swallows things daylight would never dare reveal. My name is Ellen Price, or, at least, that was my name when I was alive. I don't remember exactly when I started liking night shifts. Maybe because it made me feel apart from the noisy current of the world. Laura and I, my closest friend on shift, were a perfect team. We were the same age, grew up in Ravensbrook, started at St. Mary's, just weeks apart. On breaks, we would sneak down to the cafeteria, make cheap coffee, and tell each other the strangest things patients had ever said. But that night, all those habits vanished. It was colder than usual. Outside, drizzle tapped on the tin roof of the annex, making its familiar ticking sound. The clock on the wall read 2 a.m. I was making rounds in the East Wing. Normally, Laura would stop by, or at least text me, teasing about our more difficult patients. But tonight, not a single message had been answered. I had sent 3, called twice, nothing. At first I wasn't worried. Maybe she was busy with an emergency, or tending to a demanding patient. But by the time I reached the end of the wing, a different feeling had crept in, like a damp chill starting at my feet, crawling up my spine. In a hospital, everyone knows that if you can't find a fellow night shift nurse, it feels strange. Not because you fear they've been hurt, but because at night, the hospital is like a massive body, and every worker is a small organ. When one disappears, you feel the imbalance before you know what's wrong. I asked around. No one had seen Laura all night. The clock and log showed she started her shift at 9 p.m. No sign she had left. No one remembered seeing her after the shift began. A sharp blade of worry cut into my thoughts. I decided to head for the West Wing Laura's area tonight. The hallway there was darker than usual. 2 flickering fluorescent lights near the connecting door buzzed with a constant hum. I hated that sound. It reminded me of the radio static my grandmother's old set made when it lost signal. A sound that made the air feel frozen. I checked every room along the West Wing. No sign of her. At the nurse's station, a young nurse said she hadn't seen Laura since before midnight. One thought struck me. Security cameras. The monitoring room was near the fire stairs. Its pale green door always locked. I knocked 3 times. The hollow sound echoed. Finally, the lock clicked. Luke, the night guard, peeked out. He looked surprised to see me, but stepped aside. I explained quickly that Laura was missing. Luke frowned, scanning the feeds. Then he stopped on one frame, a side hallway on the ground floor. Rarely used. The timestamp read 11:57 p.m. Laura appeared first, walking. Behind her, a man in a hospital gown. Tall, black hair, no more than half a step away, his head tilted toward her, as if speaking. The camera's angle hid his face. In his left hand, something small glinted silver in the light. A scalpel. My heart slammed against my ribs. Switch to the next camera, I said. The next frame was empty. Laura and the man were gone. Luke zoomed in. Laura's face was tense, but not panicked. She was looking straight ahead, walking fast. The man matched her pace perfectly. He moved with no sign of weakness, and he was whistling. That melody, just 3 notes, was disturbingly familiar. I had heard it somewhere before, but couldn't place it. It felt like a faint call, echoing from an old, Locked room in my memory. Luke called for backup over the radio. I left the monitoring room and ran toward the hallway from the footage. That section led to an old part of St. Mary's abandoned rooms, paint peeling off the doors, lights dim or dead. The smell of damp mixed with disinfectant hung heavy, as if it could glue your lungs shut. At the end of the hallway, a metal door stood ajar. The light from my phone shone through the gap, catching something on the wall inside. Round, I thought it was mold, but the ring was uneven, marked with grooves spiraling inward, as if carved long ago with something sharp. I pushed the door. The hinge groaned. Inside was an old storage room, full of cardboard boxes and broken equipment. No sound, only cold air and dust. I stepped in, my heart pounding. Then, at the far end, my flashlight beam caught a figure. Laura. She was sitting on the floor, her arms and legs bound tightly in white medical gauze, her mouth sealed. Her eyes were wide, fixed on me. Before I could reach her, a tall figure stepped out from the shadows behind her, blocking the light, and the whistled melody returned clearer this time. He stood there, tall, his shadow wrapped around Laura like a solid black curtain. The light from my phone caught on the metal in his hand. No doubt now, it was a scalpel. The blade was less than 4 inches long, but sharp enough for the steel to flash like a cold spark. "Stop," he said. His voice was low, rough, but it wasn't the voice of any patient from St. Mary's. The last syllable stretched, almost melting into that same whistle from before, and it made my spine prickle. I raised both hands, trying to stay calm. "I just want to take my friend out of here." He tilted his head. Something in his eyes glinted, as if he'd heard something amusing. Then he smiled, slow, not touching his eyes. "Out of here," he repeated, tasting each word. "She's not going anywhere." I felt my grip on the phone tighten. The flashlight wavered as I took a step forward. "Put the knife down." "Not a knife." He raised it level with his face. "It's a key." I didn't have time to ask before he began whistling the same melody. 3 notes. But this time, he ended with a soft click of his tongue, like a full stop at the end of a chant. Laura let out a muffled cry through the gag. I saw her shoulders tremble, her eyes darting from me to him. "I don't want to hurt you," I said, though I could hear my own voice shake. He stepped forward, his gaze locked onto mine. When only a few paces remained, I saw the tattoo on his left wrist, a circle with spirals turning inward. The black ink was faded. I had never seen the symbol before, yet in that split second, a strange feeling hit me, like I'd seen it. Somewhere, in a dream, or in a memory that wasn't mine. He lifted the blade. I backed up, bumping into a metal shelf. The clatter rang through the room. "I don't want to, but the ritual needs the full count," he whispered. I didn't understand, but the word ritual sent ice through my chest. "Let her go." "Ill." I didn't finish. He lunged. I swung my phone, pure instinct. Light flared, the edge of the phone smashing into his shoulder, making him stagger half a step. I seized the moment, dived toward Laura to tear away the bindings. But the second my fingers brushed her wrist, a force slammed into the back of my head like a hammer. The world went black. I could still hear Laura screaming, though the gag muffled it. Footsteps dragging someone across the floor. The metal door slamming shut. Then, silence. When I opened my eyes, everything was blurred. Not the blur of adjusting focus, but the kind you see through thick, fogged glass. I realized I was standing. No pain, no cold, but my body wasn't a body anymore. I looked down. I was still in the storage room, but Laura was gone. The whistle came again, fainter, from the hallway outside. I rushed toward it. My steps were light, barely touching the floor. The hallway lights now burned bright, steady, no flicker, and I cast no shadow. He was dragging Laura. She was still bound, her eyes wild with terror. He said something, but I only caught a few words. Before sunrise, the circle, I screamed, or thought I did. No sound came out. I tried to run faster, but each time I neared him, the distance stretched like a rubber band pulled tight. I understood then. I didn't belong to this side of the world anymore. At the end of the hall, a door opened. He pulled Laura inside a pitch-black room. Before it shut, I saw a large mirror hanging inside, its wooden frame cracked and old. On the glass surface, a spiral circle was drawn, identical to the tattoo on his wrist. The door closed. The lock turned. I wandered through St. Mary's in vain. No one saw me. No one heard me. Doctors, nurses, guards, they all passed through me like I was aired by morning. When the new shift arrived, voices began to spread. Someone said they'd found Laura in the ER, head injured, but alive. But no one mentioned me. No one asked where I was. I began to understand. I wasn't meant to be found. That night, when the hospital fell quiet again, I returned to the west wing. The metal door to the storage room was sealed with warning tape, but on the wall outside, the spiral mark remained, clearer than ever. And in its center, someone had painted a bright red dot. I stared at it for hours, until I realized the dot wasn't paint. It was dark, thick, and when the light caught it, I knew it was blood, and I knew I had just become part of something much bigger. Something I still couldn't name. Daytime at St. Mary's was always bright, blinding. But when you are a ghost, daylight is never warm. It feels like a white fog covering everything, blurring the world. And I, now just a copy, without flesh, felt pushed to the very edge of the real world. I tried talking to Laura. Useless. She lay in the recovery room, white bandages wrapped around her head, eyes closed. I called her name hundreds of times. No reaction. Sometimes, I saw her eyelids tremble slightly, but maybe that was just a reflex. That feeling of being invisible was crueler than death. I began to learn how to walk through walls, through people, through objects. At first it was terrifying, like thousands of needles piercing my body. But gradually, I stopped noticing. I slipped into the security room, watched the cameras. Of course, I could not press buttons or control the screen, but I could still see the old frames. That night, after dragging Laura into the mirror room, he returned, alone. He walked out from that room with empty hands. And what made me shiver was, Laura wasn't in the frame. Not because she was gone, but because the camera recorded nothing inside that room. A perfect black void. The next night, the hospital was quiet. I returned to the West Wing hallway. The metal door was still sealed, but from inside, I heard something, like water dripping. I pressed my face to the gap. A freezing gust spilled out. In the darkness, the huge mirror was still there. But now, its surface no longer reflected the hallway. It reflected another hallway, longer, narrower, closed wooden doors on both sides. And at the far end of the hallway in the mirror, a figure stood still, staring straight at me. I stepped back. My heart, or whatever replaced it now, pounded like war drums. When I looked up again, the figure was gone. I don't know what urged me, but I circled around to the rear fire escape. The side door to the basement was still ajar. There, I heard whistling 3 familiar notes, drawn out, then whispers, in many voices at once, like a crowd chanting. The basement of St. Mary's was rarely used. Narrow hallway, bare cement walls, weak yellow lights. I followed the sound. The deeper I went, the stronger the scent became, a mix of burning incense, dried blood, and chemicals. Finally, I reached a large room. The door was slightly open. Inside were 6 people in black robes, hoods up, standing in a circle around a smaller mirror, laid flat on a stone pedestal. Around the mirror, they had placed red candles burning low. The flickering light briefly revealed their faces, but all wore white porcelain masks. Each mask had a single crack running from forehead to chin. The one standing opposite the door, holding a gleaming scalpel, was him, the man who killed me. I recognized the spiral tattoo on his wrist, showing beneath the sleeve of the robe. They were chanting something hard to make out, but I recognized the tune. It was the same whistled melody, now turned into a drawn-out hymn. At the end of each verse, they all leaned down toward the mirror, as if listening to something inside. And then, I saw her. Laura, but not Laura lying in the recovery bed. In the mirror, her face appeared, eyes wide open, mouth silent but moving without pause, as if screaming. White smoke coiled around her body, pulling her down. I lunged forward, forgetting I no longer had a body. But the moment I stepped into the candle circle, an invisible force flung me back, like a wall of wind blocking me. I hit the floor, or at least, it felt like it. His voice rang out. Another soul has stayed. The next ritual will complete the circle. Another asked, "This dawn?" "No," he said. 3 nights from now, when the circle closes, all will belong to the hollow circle. The room swayed before my eyes. The hollow circle. I didn't know what it was, but the name burned into my mind, just like the feeling when I first saw the spiral on the wall. I crawled backward, more afraid than ever, but as I left the basement hallway, I swore I would not let that circle close. Even if I was just a lost ghost, I would find a way to break it. That night, I returned to the mirror room in the West Wing. The spiral carving was still there, the red dot still not dry. I reached out to touch it, and for the first time since I died, I felt something hot, alive, very real. In that moment, I understood. What began here would not stop, and that this story had only just begun. Episode 2, 2 cars in the parking lot. There is a truth only those who work the night shift understand. When everyone leaves, the building is no longer just concrete, glass, and steel. It becomes a hollow shell, and any sound, no matter how small, echoes as if it has a will of its own. My name is Daniel Clark. I used to own a small company that specialized in cleaning offices in Ravensbrück. The job wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. Most clients hired us after hours, so we wouldn't disturb their employees. That meant I usually started when the sun went down and finished while the city was still asleep. That night, the schedule was a 2-story office building, plus a small basement. I had worked here dozens of times, never had a problem. But the moment I stepped inside, the feeling was different. It was October. Cold wind cut through my skin. I parked the company van in the back lot, entered the code on the keypad, and pulled my gear inside. The air in the building was cooler than usual, maybe because the heat wasn't on yet. I started upstairs, as always, collecting trash, dusting, vacuuming the carpet, tidying the conference room. Around 8 p.m. I took the first trash bag out to the back lot to toss in the dumpster. That's when I saw them, the 2 cars. The lot had been empty when I arrived. Now, 2 black cars sat side by side in the far corner, just beyond the security camera's reach. No one inside. Lights off. License plates, caked with dirt. Numbers, almost hidden. I stood there for a few seconds, telling myself it could be employees returning for something, or late-night maintenance. But no one had told me, and this building never had an overnight guard. I pulled the door shut, locked it tight, went back to work, but my mind wouldn't rest. Every time I passed a window, I glanced at the lot. The 2 cars were still there, silent, as if waiting. Near 10 p.m., I moved to the first floor, mopping the hallway, telling myself I'd finish early and head home. When I emptied the second trash bag into the dumpster, something strange happened. The interior light in one of the cars flickered on for a second, then went dark again. No one stepped out. Cold sweat prickled my skin, though I hadn't been moving much. I went back inside, slammed the door, locked it twice. Back at work, every small sound made me jump. The hum of the HVAC, a groan in the pipes, even the broom brushing the wall. I told myself I was being paranoid, but when I brought my equipment down to the basement, everything changed. The basement was mostly storage, cardboard boxes, metal shelves, a few broken copiers, low ceiling, yellow fluorescent lights casting long, twisted shadows that crawled along the walls. I was halfway done when I heard it from the first floor. Not a door, not something falling. Footsteps heavy, slow, deliberate. I held my breath. The steps stopped directly above me, in the lobby. Then a man's voice spoke. I couldn't make out the words. Another voice answered, deeper, rougher. Two of them, not maintenance, not employees. I backed into the shadow behind a row of shelves, my heart pounding. I pulled out my phone, meaning to call 911, but my hands shook so hard I nearly dropped it. Just as I hit the numbers, the footsteps began to descend the stairs to the basement. The stairwell light clicked on. A shadow stretched down the wall. He came first, and I saw what was in his hand. Long, black metal. A gun. I held my breath, sank to the floor, clutching the phone against my chest. No one's here. He called up the stairs, but I saw his wrist. Exposed under the cuff of his jacket, a tattoo of a circle with spiraling lines, ink black and glossy. Exactly like a symbol I had seen somewhere before, but couldn't place. From above, the second voice replied, search carefully. Don't let anyone escape. Tonight is the night of the circle. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. I didn't know what the circle was, but I knew one thing. I had just heard something I was never meant to hear. Asterisk, I forced myself to crouch as low as I could, hiding behind a stack of cardboard boxes. They rose almost to the ceiling. Each breath was like the beat of a drum. Footsteps on the stairs. Slow, each step pressing into the concrete. The light from the lamp above him stretched my shadow to the base of the shelf. I fixed my eyes on the gap between the boxes. He reached the bottom of the stairs, stopped, scanned the basement. The flashlight mounted on his gun swept slowly across each corner. Each time the beam touched my face, I had to sink deeper into the dark to keep from being seen. I hoped he would pass, but then a hoarse voice from above called down. See anything yet? He answered. No, but this smell. There's definitely someone here. Smell. I sniffed the air and froze. In the basement, beyond the scent of dust and rotting paper, was something acrid, metallic, like rusted iron. The smell of blood. His shadow shifted. The flashlight turned directly toward my shelf. I knew in just seconds he would see me. I glanced left, an open space leading to the old storage room. No light. If I ran fast enough, I might. I didn't think. When the light brushed my face, I sprang from hiding, rushed as if chased to the room's edge. A shout rang behind me. Footsteps thundered after. I slipped inside, shut the door, turned the latch. The room was pitch dark, only a thin slice of light from the small window high up. The smell of blood was stronger. My hand touched the wall and jerked back. My fingers met something sticky, cold. I brought it close to my eyes. Fresh blood. My heart pounded. In the corner stood a wooden table. On it lay a white porcelain mask, facing up. A crack ran from forehead to chin, just like in the crime stories I had read. Beside it, a blood-stained rope and a surgeon's scalpel, gleaming clean. The door rattled hard. He was trying to break the latch. I searched for a way out, only the small window. I dragged a chair, climbed, forced at the bars, but as soon as I pushed my head through, a sharp crack rang. The door burst open. The flashlight hit the back of my neck. Got you. He yanked me down. My back slammed into the wall. He pressed the gun to my temple. This isn't your business, but you've seen too much. I gasped. I tried to speak. I won't tell anyone. I don't know who you are. He gave a thin laugh. No need to know. You just need to vanish before the circle closes. I didn't understand circle closes when he swung the gun. A hard blow to my temple. The world tilted. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the floor, mouth gagged, hands and feet bound tight. He dragged me out of the room, pulled me down the basement hall. We turned into another room, larger, lit by weak yellow light dot in the center. On the concrete floor, someone had drawn a wide circle with a dark liquid. Swirls pointed toward its center, where a small mirror lay. Around it burned 6 low red candles. 3 figures in black, hooded robes stood around the circle. All wore white porcelain masks with a single long crack. One leaned down and whispered to him, "The count is full. Tonight, the path opens." I thrashed, screamed into the gag. No one cared. He knelt beside me, pulled out my left arm. From his pocket came the scalpel, steel glinting. Panic surged. No escape. The blade bit my wrist. Burning pain, blood spilled, hot, sharp, spreading into the swirls. I faded. My mind slid away. The chanting grew distant, then stopped. When I opened my eyes, I was standing. No ropes, no pain. The room wavered. The candles shimmered like water. The 3 hooded figures were still there, but now their shadows twisted, like long arms reaching toward me. I realized I was no longer breathing, and no one could see me. I called out. I shouted. Nothing. He stood in the circle, raised his head, looked into the empty air, right where I was. His smile was slow. He whispered, "Another soul for the circle." I stepped back, and for the first time, I saw in the mirror, at the circle's heart, not me, but a narrow hallway, stretching forever, doors shut tight on both sides. At the far end, a figure stood still, looking straight at me. When you die, you think everything stops, but it doesn't. Everything goes on, only you're no longer part of it. I stood in the basement room, watching them clean up. One by one, the candles were snuffed out. White smoke curled upward, then dissolved into the dark. He, the one who killed me, slipped the mirror into a black cloth bag, handling it like it was the most precious thing in the world. On the concrete floor, the spiral drawn from my blood spread wider, but they didn't bother to wipe it away. They left without looking back. I stood there, not knowing what to do. When I looked down, I saw my shoes, fading, then gone. My whole body, it seemed, was nothing more than the sense of myself. Not skin, not blood, just an idea. I remembered the hallway in the mirror, long, narrow, doors shut tight on both sides. The image lingered before my eyes, like a memory that refused to fade. I wandered upstairs. The lights in the building were out. Only the street lamps outside cast a dull glow through the glass dot. 2 cars still sat in the corner of the lot. As I approached the window, one of the cars flashed its headlights, just like when I was alive. But this time, in that flash, I saw a face reflected in the car's glass, pale white, a crack running from forehead to chin. Then it was gone. I turned away, and that's when I saw her. A woman with brown hair, wearing an old nurse's uniform, stood in the middle of the hallway, looking straight at me. Her face was pale, but her eyes were sharp, alert. "You just died, didn't you?" Her voice was soft, but clear. I'm Daniel. Ellen," she said shortly. "St. Mary's Hospital." The name struck something in my memory. A news story from weeks ago, about a nurse gone missing. Ellen. It was her. "They killed you too?" I asked. She nodded, and trapped me in the circle. But I escaped. I couldn't understand. Escape? How does a ghost escape? Ellen looked at me like she could read my thoughts. The blood spiral, the mirror, and 7 souls. When they have enough, they call it the closed circle. If we're still inside when that happens, we disappear. Completely. A chill went through me. And if they don't have enough yet, then they keep killing and trapping souls in the hallway. She told me about the Hollow Circle, a secret cult that hunted people on night shifts, or alone. those who wouldn't be missed. Each ritual needed a blood circle, a mirror, and a new soul. 7 circles, 7 souls, opened a door. She didn't know where it led, but she was sure it wasn't heaven. I followed Ellen back down to the basement. The ritual room was empty now, only the smell of blood and candle wax lingering. Ellen pointed to where the mirror had been. "Stand. Here you'll see." I stepped forward. On the concrete, even though the blood had dried, the spiral was still visible. And the moment I stood in the center, the space around me shifted. I was back in that hallway, long, narrow, doors sealed, tight on both sides. No electric light, only a faint glow dripping down from the ceiling. Ellen stood beside me. "This is the mirror hallway. Each door holds a trapped soul." She approached one door. When her hand neared it, a pounding erupted from inside, like someone desperate to break out. A woman's voice screamed, muffled, distant. "Help me." I knew that voice. "Laura." I tried to open the door, but my hand passed through the knob. No grip, no turn. Ellen pulled me back. "We can't open it until the time comes. But if the circle closes, every one of these doors will vanish." We walked deeper into the hallway. From other doors came knocking, weeping, and even mad laughter. At the very end, a figure stood still, watching us. Ellen's voice dropped low. "Don't go near it. That's not a person." I didn't ask more. We stepped out of the spiral, and the basement returned. Ellen turned to me. "You're number 5. That means they need 2 more souls to close the circle. We have to break it before that happens." I wanted to ask how, but Ellen had already vanished, dissolving into the dark as if she'd never been there. Only me remained, alone, in the freezing basement. And outside, in the black of the parking lot, 2 cars still sat waiting. Episode 3. The knock from room 6. I never liked working the night shift, but in a small town like Ravensbrück, jobs aren't easy to find. Rest and Stay Motel had been around for nearly 30 years. It sat right off Highway 7. By day, guests came and went, truckers, tourists, a few secret lovers. But at night, it became a different place entirely. My name is Marissa Lane, 26, divorced, raising my 4-year-old daughter. The night clerk job didn't pay much, but it covered rent and let me pay my mom to watch Ava. The motel had 12 rooms, split into 2 rows, rooms 1 to 6 in the front, 7 to 12 in the back. From the front desk, I could see the parking lot and the entire front row. That night, only 3 rooms were occupied, 2, 8, and 10. Room 6 had been locked up for a long time. The window was broken. A deep crack ran down the wall. The owner refused to fix it. Rain tapped on the tin awning. Water dripped into the gutter with a hollow plink. I poured coffee, opened the register book, made my notes. Close to midnight, a black pickup pulled up. The driver got out, baseball cap, brown jacket, long-haul trucker type. He paid cash for a room. I handed him the key to room 4. He nodded without a word. As he took the key, his sleeve pulled back. I saw it, a small, black spiral tattoo on his wrist. I'd seen that symbol somewhere before, but couldn't remember where. It made my skin crawl. He carried little, just an old backpack, but as he turned, the zipper gaped open. I glimpsed something white inside, like a porcelain mask, cracked straight down the middle. Around 1 a.m., I stepped into the back room to make more coffee. When I returned, I heard it knock, knock, knock. From outside, I thought maybe a guest had come back late, but the lot was empty. The black pickup sat in the same spot, dark. Still, the knocking came again, steady, measured. This time, I realized it was coming from the front row of rooms. 3 knocks. Silence. I stepped onto the walkway. The rain was light now, but cold. The row of doors glowed under the yellow awning lights. No movement, no voices. Then I froze. The sound was coming from room 6. That door had been locked for months. I had the key, but never opened it. I pressed my ear to the wood. Faint whispers. Inside, right on the other side. Too soft to make out the words. I stepped back, ready to return to the desk. The knocks started again, harder, faster. Then a woman's voice, rough, cracked open it. Please, open it. My feet refused to move. Logic told me to walk away, but something deep inside urged me forward, like if I didn't open it now, I'd lose the only chance to help whoever was in there. I went back for the key. When I returned, the man from room 4 was standing on the walkway, just a few steps from room 6. He looked at me, then at the door. A small smile curved at the corner of his mouth. That room shouldn't be opened, he said, low, certain. My throat felt dry. Why? Because what's inside doesn't want to leave alone. He paused. It wants someone to go with it. Before I could speak, he turned away, walked back to his room, closed the door. I stood there, alone, rain pattering on the awning. The knocks came again, faster now, urgent, like a heartbeat in panic. I slid the key into the lock. The click of metal seemed too loud in the still night. The door creaked open, inch by inch, darkness. The smell of damp and rust hit me like a wave. I took a step back. Light from the hall spilled across the far wall. A long crack ran from the ceiling down to the floor, and in the middle of the room, a tall dust-covered mirror. Its surface reflected not me, but a long, narrow hallway, with closed doors on both sides. Asterisk. I stood at the doorway, eyes fixed on the tall mirror, nearly reaching the ceiling. Strangely, the wooden frame was thick with dust, but the mirror's surface was spotless. So clear it reflected every detail, except what I saw wasn't the room I was in. A hallway, long, dark, lined on both sides with identical wooden doors. Ceiling lights glimmered faintly, hazy, as if shining through water. I glanced up. Room 6's ceiling was perfectly normal. So where did that image come from? The knocking had stopped. Instead, whispers came from inside the mirror. I leaned in. At first, just fragments of sound. Then a woman's voice emerged, clear. Don't. Come in. I jerked back, heart pounding. Then, the reflection shifted. 2 people stood in the middle of the hallway. A brown-haired woman in a faded nurse's uniform. A man in a gray shirt, sleeves rolled up. Both stared straight at me. The woman Lynn spoke. First, you are number 6. Before I could ask, the man Daniel stepped forward. Listen carefully. Don't let them take you. If you get pulled into the spiral, you'll be trapped here forever. Who are they? I whispered. Ellen raised a hand, pointing to the end of the hallway. I looked. A tall figure stood still, wearing a black hood, its face pure white, split by a single, jagged crack. It didn't move, but I felt its gaze pierce the distance, pierce the glass, pierce me. A dry click echoed from the floor of room 6. I looked down, amid the stains and dust, a circle, drawn in some dark, dried liquid. Lines spiraled outward straight to the mirror's base. A cold wind rushed past me, though the windows stayed shut. Dust lifted from the frame, revealing carved symbols, curved, twisting, like coded runes, from no language I knew. Chanting began, not from somewhere far away, from inside the mirror. A man's voice, low, measured, a woman's voice, high, drawn out, like morning. At my feet, the spiral darkened, wet again. Thick crimson seeped from cracks in the concrete, flowing into the lines. Get out now. Daniel's shout boomed, muffled, like through water. I stepped back, too late. A sudden force yanked me toward the glass. I braced against the frame, but it was like my whole body was being swallowed. The hallway's light flared, then went black. I opened my eyes. Wooden floor under me. Closed doors all around. Weak yellow light from the ceiling. I turned, expecting the mirror, but behind me was a solid wooden wall. Footsteps. Ellen and Daniel ran toward me. Ellen grabbed my hand. Her words rushed. "You've been pulled in, but there's still time. As long as it's not the night of the closing cycle, you can escape." "Closing cycle?" I asked. Daniel's eyes flicked toward the far end of the hall, where the hooded figure still stood, motionless. "When there are 7 souls, then there's no way out." I swallowed. "How many now?" Ellen's grip tightened. 6, and you just became the 6th. The hallway trembled. Like a giant door had just opened somewhere. The hooded figure took a step forward, then another. Each time its foot touched the floor, the lights flickered. Daniel pulled me. "Don't let him touch you." But the hall stretched endlessly. The footsteps behind us were steady, unhurried, never slowing. I glanced back. The distance never changed, no matter how we ran. Ellen stopped at a door, pressed her ear to it. "Someone's in there." I heard it too, heart pounding, frantic. A man's voice, hoarse, shouting, "Open up, please." Daniel's face went pale. "That's the next victim. They're hunting him tonight. If they catch him, the cycle will close." Before I could process, the hallway's light vanished. Only the hooded figure's footsteps remained, and the freezing presence closing in at my back. The dim light from the hallway ceiling flickered. With every step the hooded figure took, another pulse of darkness came. Ellen pulled Daniel and me toward the far end of the hall. No map, no signs, only endless identical doors. "They're hunting," Ellen said, breathless. "If they catch that man, the circle will close." "But where is he?" I asked. Daniel pointed to a door on the right. "Out there, the real world." I pressed my face to the small glass window. What I saw made my skin crawl. A dark warehouse, fluorescent lights stuttering overhead, a security guard patrolling with a flashlight. He yawned, unaware the hooded shadow was following close behind. "We have to warn him." I pounded the door. The sound didn't pass through. He didn't hear a thing. Ellen shook her head. "We can't speak to them directly. The only way is to pull him in here before they take him. Pull him in. This place isn't safe." I froze. "Not safe," she agreed, "but better than being dragged straight into the ritual spiral. Here, he still has time." Footsteps outside quickened. The hooded figure drew a crimson cord from his cloak, a metal loop tied at the end. With one flick, it wrapped clean around the guard's throat. He thrashed. The flashlight rolled, beam spinning like the eye of a trapped fish. Daniel gripped my shoulder. "Marissa, you're the newest one here. You still have a tether to the real world. You can open this door." "How?" "Believe you can, just want it." It sounded absurd, but I had no other choice. I placed my hand on the handle, closed my eyes, imagined it swinging open. A click. Light spilled through a narrow gap. I lunged out, seized the guard's arm, yanked hard. He vanished from the noose, falling into the mirror hall at my feet. His eyes darted wildly. "What the hell, where am I?" I didn't have time to answer. The hooded figure stepped through the doorway. Now he was here, in the hallway. The temperature plunged. My breath turned to mist. "Run," Ellen shouted. We dragged the guard deeper into the hall. But it wasn't stretching endlessly anymore. It was shrinking. Doors slammed shut on both sides, driving us toward one destination, the mirror at the far end. Daniel stopped, planting himself between us and the hooded figure. "Go, I'll hold him." I tried to argue, but Elon's grip tightened. We pulled the guard forward. The mirror came into view, its surface rippling. It no longer showed room 6. It showed a vast chamber, a circle of fresh blood drawn on the floor. 7 red candles burned. The guard froze. This is... I followed his gaze to the center of the circle. A smaller mirror stood upright. In it, a man in a cracked porcelain mask held a black book etched with spiraling symbols. He looked straight at us and spoke. "The next night we'll close the circle." A sudden force yanked the 3 of us toward the mirror. "No," Ellen screamed. We were pulled through and crashed back into room 6. But now the blood spiral was fresh, seeping from cracks in the floor. Outside, the rain had stopped. An engine roared to life. I turned to the window. A black pickup was leaving the lot. In the driver's seat, a man with a spiral tattoo glanced up, as if he knew exactly where I stood. Episode 4. The last night shift in the warehouse. People think working the night shift as a warehouse guard is easy. Just walk a few rounds. The rest of the time, drink coffee. Scroll your phone. I used to believe that, until I took my final shift at Everford Logistics. My name is Victor Hale, 13-9, former Marine. Now I work security for a shipping company on the edge of the city. The warehouse is over 2,000 square meters. Rows of shelves, stacked up to the ceiling. Wooden crates, paper bundles, machines. Daytime is busy with trucks and forklifts, but at night, it's just me, a few fluorescent lights, and the wind whistling through gaps in the metal doors. My shift starts at 10 p.m. I take the keys, the radio, and a flashlight from Joe, the day guy. The old man likes to joke. Nights are long here, Vic. Count your steps. If they're more than usual, then never mind. Don't think about it. I just chuckle. I think it's his way of spooking rookies. That night, the warehouse is quieter than usual. I walk along the shelves, flashlight sweeping over dusty boxes. When I reach the far corner of Section B, I notice something strange. On the concrete floor, there's a faint spiral, a near-perfect circle, half a meter wide. I kneel, touch it with my finger. Dry, but dark brown. I'm about to turn on the overhead light for a better look, when the radio crackles. A distant male voice, warped, seeping through. Number 6 has entered the circle. I freeze. It's not Joe's voice. Not anyone I know. I try to answer, but only static comes back. And a sound. Someone whistling a short tune, over and over. I shut off the radio, keep walking, but the spiral stays in my head. Back at the guard desk, I open the night log, the book every shift updates. Flipping through, I see a scrawled line, not my handwriting, not Joe's. Don't let him see your eyes. Around 2 a.m., metal screeches, like the warehouse door opening. I grab my flashlight, follow the sound down the aisle. At the last row, my chest tightens. A tall figure, black cloak, standing in the middle of the path. I shine the light at his face, but there's no skin. Only a white porcelain mask, cracked from forehead to chin. He doesn't move. Yet I feel his gaze, cutting through the mask, weighing my soul. I shout, "Warehouse is closed at night. Get out." He doesn't answer. Just reaches inside his cloak, pulls out a dark red cord. Before I can draw my baton, the cord whips through the air, wraps tight around my neck. I fall hard, flashlight spinning away, light rolling across the floor. He pulls, tightens. My breath stops. Through the blur of panic, I see it. A door, standing alone in the middle of the warehouse, glowing like it's open to somewhere else, and I'm being dragged toward it. Asterisk. People still think working night shifts as a warehouse guard is an easy job. Just walk a few rounds. The rest is coffee and scrolling on your phone. I used to believe that, until I took the last shift at Everford Logistics. My name is Victor Hale, 39 years old, former Marine. Now I work as a security guard for a transport company on the edge of the city. The warehouse is more than 2,000 square meters, divided into many rows of shelves, reaching up to the ceiling. It holds all kinds of goods, wooden crates, paper packages, machines. Daytime is full of trucks coming and going, but at night, it's only me, a few fluorescent lights, and the wind seeping through the gaps in the metal doors. My shift starts at 10 p.m. I get the keys, radio, and flashlight from Joe, the day shift guy. The old man always jokes, "Nights here are long, Vic. Count your steps. If you find more than usual, then, well, don't think too much." I force a smile. Think it's just his way of spooking the rookies. That night, the warehouse was quieter than usual. I walked along the shelves. The flashlight beams swept across dusty stacks of crates. When I reached the corner of Zone B, I saw something strange. On the concrete floor was a faint swirl mark, almost a perfect circle, about half a meter in diameter. I knelt down, touched it with my finger, dry but dark brown. I was about to turn on the light to see better when the radio crackled. A distant, distorted male voice came through. "Number 6 has entered the circle." I froze. It wasn't Joe's voice, and not anyone else I knew. I tried to call back, but only heard static, and a sound like someone whistling a short tune. Over and over, I turned off the radio, kept walking my rounds, but I couldn't get that swirl out of my head. When I got back to the guard desk, I opened the night logbook. Every shift has to update it. Flipping through, I saw a scrawled line. Not my handwriting, not Joe's dot. "Do not let him see your eyes around." 2 a.m. I heard the screech of metal, like the warehouse door being opened. I grabbed my flashlight, followed the hallway. Turning past the last shelf row, my heart clenched. A tall figure, in a black cloak, standing in the aisle. The flashlight hit his face, but there was no flesh. Only a white porcelain mask, cracked from forehead to chin. He didn't move, but I felt his gaze pierce through the mask, weighing my soul. I shouted, "This warehouse is closed at night. Leave now." He didn't answer, just reached into his cloak, pulled out a dark red cord. Before I could draw my baton, the cord lashed through the air, wrapped tight around my neck. I fell. The flashlight flew. Its light rolled across the floor. He pulled hard, tightened. My breath caught. In panic, I saw, at the edge of my vision, a lone door standing in the warehouse, glowing bright, like it opened into somewhere else, and I was dragged toward it. His footsteps grew closer. With every step, the air around us thickened, pressed in. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, blending with Ellen's and Maria's ragged breaths. Daniel pulled us into an open doorway. The room inside was small, 4 wooden walls, a long table draped in black cloth. On it, a large metal ring carved with swirling symbols, the same as the ones on my warehouse floor, but here, they glowed red, like burning coals. "This isn't a hiding place," Ellen said, voice shaking. "This is the door slammed shut behind us." A sharp click. The lock turned from the outside. The light changed, from sickly yellow to deep crimson. The wooden walls began to crack. From the gaps, thick black liquid seeped out, running down to the floor. The smell was metallic, so sharp I had to cover my nose. Then he stepped in. From a door that hadn't existed before, the hooded figure stood tall. The white porcelain mask split in two, revealing an endless darkness underneath. He didn't speak, he only raised his hand. The red cord appeared, twitching like a snake. Daniel moved in front of me. Not a chance. But the cord wasn't aimed at him. It lashed through the air, looped around my neck. Cold seeped through my skin, as if my blood was flowing backwards. Ellen shouted, "Let him go." He paused, tilted his head, and then his voice came, not from his mouth, but inside my head. "Victor Hale, the final piece." I growled, "Why me?" 11 years ago, Kandahar, this warehouse, held what they needed. You saw it, and you still remember. I stepped back, horrified. The memory crashed into me. 2014, my unit searched a storage site outside Kandahar. Inside were wooden crates marked with swirling symbols. Orders came from above: seal them, never open. But one night, I disobeyed. I looked inside and saw ancient mirrors, frames carved with the words, "Circulus vacuus." He stepped closer. The cord tightened. "You are the last link. When the circle closes, your memory will open the true door." Marissa lunged. grabbed the cord. The moment she touched it, she was thrown back, crashing to the floor. Daniel and Ellen pulled at me, but it felt like my feet had fused to the glowing metal ring. Beneath me, the swirling pattern burned brighter. From the cracks in the floor, black smoke poured out, curling around my body, my vision blurred. Through the haze, I saw another place, a vast room, high ceiling. In the center, a circle of blood. 7 red candles burned. 6 figures stood motionless. Inside, Ellen, Daniel, Marissa, and 3 faces I didn't know. Their eyes were empty. The last empty space was where I stood. He pulled the cord again. Tonight, the circle closes. I screamed. My body was dragged toward the ritual chamber. Ellen clung to me, fighting the pull, but the force was too strong. Daniel's voice was distant. If you go in there, it's over for all of us. My sight dimmed, and just before I lost it completely, I saw it. In the corner of the ritual room, a black book on a stone pedestal, its cover carved with the same swirling mark I'd seen in Kandahar. Then, everything went dark. Episode 5. The One Who Heard the Chanting. I am Harper Quinn, 32 years old, freelance reporter. For the past 3 months, I have been chasing a string of disappearances the police never want to talk about. They call them disappearances of undetermined cause, a polite way to say there is no evidence, no suspect, and no hope. The list of victims grows every week. Ellen Price, nurse; Marissa Cole, motel receptionist; Daniel Brooks, air conditioner repairman; and the latest, Victor Hale, security guard at Everford Logistics Warehouse. All vanished during night shifts. No one saw them leave their workplaces. No cameras caught anything. Only one thing in common: at the scene, there is always a faint spiral mark, dark brown, and a few witnesses hear a repeating whistle tune. I do not believe in coincidence. Everford is a portside town, wrapped in heavy fog almost all year round. People here have a habit of avoiding the streets at night, especially on crescent moon nights. They tell vague stories about the hollow spiral, a mysterious cult existing since the early last century, hunting souls to serve an ancient ritual. Some believe, some dismiss it as a tale to scare children. I want the truth? I start with the warehouse where Victor vanished. The building stands alone, at the edge of the industrial zone. Rusty metal doors, an empty parking lot. The police sealed it, but the tape has been cut. Someone went in before me. Inside, it is pitch black. Only a few slivers of light leak through the tin gaps. I switch on my flashlight, sweep it across dusty shelves. At Albi, I see it, a perfect spiral mark, about half a meter wide, right in the middle of the path. Dark brown, edges dried, the center still damp. I kneel, touch it with my fingertip. The metallic smell rises. Definitely blood. I reach for my phone to take a picture. The signal drops. The screen goes black, then lights up with a strange text. No number displayed. Tonight, crescent moon. Listen closely. I leave the warehouse. Rent a small room nearby to keep watch. The clock reads Jam 11:45 menit. Pim. A crescent moon hangs behind a layer of gray clouds. I sit by the window, point my recording mic toward the warehouse. The wind seeps in, icy cold. The town lies in silence. Only the distant waves break the stillness, and then I hear it. A low, steady sound, like dozens of voices reciting the same line. I turn up the volume on my headphones. The syllables stretch long, not in any language I know, but the phrase circulus vacuus repeats over and over. Mixed in are the sounds of metal striking and the familiar whistle. I do not know what compels me. I put on my coat, grab my flashlight and recorder, step outside. The chanting leads me through dark alleys, all the way to an empty lot behind the warehouse. There, I see it, a wooden door, standing, alone. No frame, no wall, glowing as if lit from within. I know I should turn back, but my feet move forward on their own. When my fingers touch the ice-cold handle, the chanting stops. Only my heartbeat thunders in my ears. I open the door, asterisk stepping through the door. I staggered, blinded by white light, striking straight into my eyes. When my sight cleared, I realized I was standing in an endless hallway, lined on both sides with mirrors that reached the ceiling. The light had no clear source, yet everything shone as bright as day, except for faint, shadowed corners buried deep inside the reflections. The chanting was still there, but now it no longer echoed from afar. It pounded directly into my head, as if each mirror had a mouth, perfectly repeating the words, circulus vacuus, not a beat too many, not a beat too few. I tried to turn back, but the wooden door had vanished. Only one mirror remained, reflecting me, and another shadow standing right behind me. Yet when I spun around, the hallway was empty. I walked slowly, forcing my breath to stay steady. In the mirrors to my right, I began to see them. Ellen, in her nurse uniform, eyes hollow. Marissa, frozen like a statue, holding the motel keys. Daniel, head bowed, gripping something I could not see. And Victor, the guard, looking straight at me, his lips moving with silent words. I leaned close to the glass, trying to read them. He said, "Go. Go now." I slammed my hand against the mirror, but the surface was ice-cold, unyielding at that moment. The mirror across from me changed, turning from clear to a thick, solid black, like spreading ink, swallowing Victor's image whole. The chanting dropped a pitch, heavier, slower, each word dragging out without end. I heard footsteps, very slow, coming from ahead. A tall figure, cloaked in black, moved closer. A white porcelain mask cracked from forehead to chin. He stopped a few steps away, tilted his head, and a voice rang directly inside my mind. "Harper Quinn, it has been a long time since we met." I stepped back, heart pounding. "I've never. You have. You simply do not remember, but you have heard my voice since you were a child." I gripped my recorder tighter, forcing calm. "Why am I here?" "Because you heard it. Only those who hear the circle's chant can open the door, and you will tell this story, or become this story." He extended his hand toward me, palm up. In it, a glowing red spiral mark, identical to the ones I had seen at the scenes of the disappearances. It pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat, faster, stronger. I backed away until my shoulders touched another mirror, but in this mirror, I did not see myself. I saw a round chamber. The floor was a spiral of blood. 7 red candles burned bright at the center. Victor was bound, head hanging low, blood dripping in a steady line into the grooves of the symbol. Around him stood 6 hooded figures, all facing him. One of them lifted their head, and it was Ellen, her eyes as empty as shattered glass. I reached out, touching the mirror's surface, and the glass began to soften like water. But before I could pass through, the hooded man placed a freezing hand on my shoulder. "Not yet." His hand tightened slightly on my shoulder, and in that moment, the entire hallway seemed to shift direction. I was no longer where I had been standing. The mirrors on either side curved inward, their surfaces rippling, as if they were breathing. The chanting vanished, replaced by a dense, suffocating silence that made my ears ring. Then, a whisper, "Harper." A woman appeared in the mirror to my right. She looked to be in her 30s, hair dripping wet, a heavy waterlogged coat clinging to her body. Her skin was pale, as if she had been submerged for far too long. Her wide eyes pleaded, "I'm Nora Whitfield. They didn't finish the ritual on me. I'm trapped between the circle and the door." I stepped closer. "You know how to get out of here?" She nodded faintly, but her voice trembled. "Yes, but you must remember one thing. All of us were brought here because of one person, not the hooded one, the one behind him." I frowned. "Who?" Nora glanced around nervously, as if afraid someone might hear, and whispered Elias Crow. "Don't let him know you've heard that name." The instant she spoke it, the mirror went black. I was pulled toward it, fighting to resist. A freezing sensation pierced through every fiber of my body as I fell into absolute darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in a round chamber. The walls were covered in mirrors, but their reflections were wrong. My own image was warped, arms stretched unnaturally long, face missing its eyes. Whispers drifted from every direction, as if people were speaking about me without speaking to me. Through a mirror ahead, I saw Victor still bound within the spiral of blood, but this time, I saw more clearly. The one performing the ritual wasn't the hooded man. It was a gaunt figure, hair pure white, wearing a robe embroidered entirely with spiral symbols. His voice thundered, louder than all the other chanting combined. When he lifted his head, I recognized the face from old photos in the missing persons files at the town library. Elias Crow, a scholar of occult history who vanished in 1972, rumored to be the founder of the Hollow Circle. I reached for my recorder, but it was gone. Instead, in my palm, a small spiral mark glowed faintly, pulsing in time with my heartbeat. Nora's voice echoed from far away. "Harper, if that mark lights up completely, he will know where you are." I tried to scrape it away, digging at my own skin, but the harder I tried, the clearer the spiral became, blazing in the darkness. At the same moment, Elias Crow stopped chanting and turned directly toward me. Even though I stood in a reverse reflection room no one should be able to see into. He smiled, and when he opened his mouth, I heard my own voice, not screaming, but reading along with the ritual. Episode 6, The One Who Escaped. My name is Caleb Voss. People say I'm obsessed, unhinged, or worse, making things up to squeeze money from those who believe in the supernatural. They can believe whatever they want. I don't need anyone to confirm what I've been through. In 2005, I worked nights as a security guard at a fish processing plant on the outskirts of New Haven. My shift was like any other, until I saw it, a strange wooden door, standing alone in the middle of the storage yard. The plant lights had never touched it before, but that night, it glowed. Curiosity won. I opened it, and woke up in a place that shouldn't exist. A mirrored hallway, empty of people, filled only with chanting from every direction. I was kept there for 3 days, or at least, I think it was 3. In that hallway, time didn't exist. Only footsteps, and the smell of dried blood. Every time I tried a door, it led to the same thing, a circular room, its floor carved with a red spiral. Black-robed figure standing in a ring, utterly still. On the 3rd day, I saw him. Elias Crow. No introduction was needed. I knew instantly. He was the one holding all the strings. He looked straight at me, and spoke only one sentence. "It's not your time." I woke up in the storage yard, keys still clutched in my hand, my watch frozen at 3:03 a.m. But from that day on, a faint red spiral marked my wrist, one that never faded. Every crescent moon, it burned like fire. I quit my job, left New Haven, never stayed in one place more than a year, for 2 decades. I kept away from abandoned buildings, strange wooden doors, and above all, chanting. I thought I'd escaped, but last week, a package arrived. No sender. Inside was an old handheld microphone, its cable cut. I recognized it instantly, the kind reporters use for outdoor recording. When I switched it on, there was no static. Instead, I heard a sound I knew all too well, the deep, slow chanting of circulus vacuus, echoing from what felt like a vast room. I shut it off immediately, heart pounding. But in the middle of that chanting, I'd heard a woman's whisper, "Harper, Quinn, I don't know who she is, but I know this, the circle has opened again, and Elias Crow never left." Asterisk, I knew, I couldn't ignore it. That microphone hadn't ended up in my hands by accident. Harper Quinn, though I'd never met her, was somewhere inside the circle, and if I was right, she had only one night before the ritual was complete. I went to Maeve Holloway, a thin woman living in a wooden house on the edge of the marsh. The last time I'd seen her was in 2006, when I was still trying to find answers for what I'd been through. She was the only one willing to speak plainly about the hollow circle and the name Elias Crow. Maeve opened the door, her deep eyes locking on mine. "Caleb Voss, I thought you'd learned how to forget." I did. For 20 years. But now they've opened the circle again. She was silent for a moment, then gestured for me to come in. On the table lay old leather notebooks, filled with spiral symbols and cramped handwriting. She pointed to one page, a circle divided into 7 sections, each marked with the moon in a different phase. This is the 7th waning cycle. Every 7th waning moon after a disappearance, the hallway opens again, linking the 2 worlds. Tonight is the 7th, since Victor Hale vanished. I swallowed hard, and if it's not closed. She met my eyes, her voice low. Then the circle will close, and Elias will have 7 souls enough to open the true door. When that happens, nothing will stop him. Maeve handed me a torn map. 3 spots marked around town. She called them anchor points. According to her, a victim is kept at one of these points before being taken through the mirrored hallway. I spent the whole afternoon searching the first 2, an abandoned warehouse and a basement under an old bar, but found nothing. Only one remained, an abandoned red brick chapel at the edge of Westford Cemetery. Night fell quickly, and at midnight, I stood before the chapel. Its wooden doors were rotting, but inside, blinding light. Not like lamplight, but pure white, as if it poured from the air itself. I stepped in, and my chest tightened. In the center of the nave stood a wooden door, no frame, no wall. From the gap beneath it, white smoke spilled out, freezing, cold. And from beyond it, a low, heavy chant rolled through, each word like stone. Circulus vacuus. Circulus vacuus. The door was open. I drew a deep breath, placed my hand on the ice-cold handle, and stepped through. The feeling hit me instantly, as if I were pulled into a void, frozen and stretching at once. My breath crushed tight in my chest when my eyes opened. The mirror hallway stretched into infinity, but this time was different. The light here was a pale, watery blue, like moonlight filtering through deep water. And in each mirror was not my reflection, but the faces of those trapped inside. Ellen stood, her eyes vacant. Marissa's lips moved faintly, as if reciting some unseen words. Victor knelt, blood running down his forehead. Harper was bound, her eyes burning with rage and fear. I moved quickly toward Harper's mirror, but as I neared, the image changed. She was lying in the center of a spiral of blood. 6 figures in black robes surrounded her. At the center stood a thin man, white hair falling loose, his robe covered in spiraling symbols. Elias Crow. My heart slammed into my throat as Elias lifted his head. His eyes were deep, endless dark. He smiled faintly, and his voice filled my mind. "You've returned, Caleb Voss. Good. Did you think I spared you 20 years ago out of mercy? No, I need you to close this circle." I clenched my jaw. "I'm not playing your game. You have no choice. The moment you stepped inside, you belonged." The ritual chamber beyond the mirror began to tremble. The chanting Circulus vacuus rose with the pounding of metal drums. Beneath Harper, the spiral of blood began to spin, drawn inward like a flood current. Ilias raised his hand. The spiral symbols on the floor flared with light, pulsing to the rhythm of the chant. Suddenly, the mirror in front of me softened, turning fluid like water. A violent pull dragged at me. I fought to resist, but a freezing hand from the other side closed around my wrist as I was yanked through. The spiral mark on my arm burned white hot, until all I saw was searing red. I hit the cold floor. Before me, Elias stood close, his gaze drilling into my mind. The true door lies where 7 bells never ring. Find it, and you will understand. He flung me from the circle, like tossing away something useless. I tumbled down a narrow corridor, my ears pounding with drums and chant. When I looked up, Harper was being pulled deeper into the circle's center, her eyes locked onto mine. Her lips moved, silent, but I read the shape of the words. Don't trust anyone. A sudden wind struck me from behind, so fast I couldn't brace. In a blink, I was hurled through the wooden door, falling into thick, unbroken darkness. When I came to, I was lying on the cold floor of the abandoned chapel. The door was gone, but the spiral mark on my arm now burned with light like fire. Episode 7, The True Door. When I opened my eyes, there was no white light, no reflection of endless mirrors. Here, there was only darkness, and an endless, empty expanse. The air was heavy as lead. Each breath dragged on, slow and strained. I tried to step forward, realizing I stood on ground, cold as preserved stone, but there was no visible edge. Far away, faint shapes of people stood scattered, all facing the same direction, none moving. I walked closer and saw Ellen, the nurse from episode 1, her face rigid, her eyes blank. Beside her stood Marissa, still holding the ring of rusted keys. Victor knelt, hands bound behind his back, but what froze my spine was Nora. She wasn't like the others. Her eyes were bright, and when she saw me, she gave a slight nod. This isn't the mirror hall anymore. This is the waiting room for the true door, Nora whispered. The others have lost the right to choose. I asked, what is the true door? She looked straight at me. It's Elias Crow's final goal. He needs 7 souls, 7 who have seen the circle to open it. Once it opens, it will never close. This town will no longer belong to the living world. I thought of each one: Ellen, Marissa, Victor, Nora, Daniel, myself, and Caleb. A chill slid down my spine. If he succeeds. Nora was silent for a moment, then spoke. When the door opens, all will be pulled into the deep shadow, a place with no time, no light, only chanting forever. I clenched my fists. Then why am I here, and not in the ritual chamber? Because you resisted. He can't fully control you yet, but that will change when the bell rings. Suddenly, a faint sound echoed in my head, Caleb's voice, muffled and strained, as if coming through water. Harper, can you hear me? I'm looking for you. Don't go toward the white light. I held my breath. Caleb, don't go near the door. Listen to me. Don't. His voice broke apart. He needs 7. The echo faded, replaced by another sound. At first, I thought it was my heartbeat, but it grew clearer. Dot dong, dong, dong. A bell, but not from any church I knew. It rose from beneath my feet, from deep underground, and with each toll, the darkness around us trembled as if something vast was beginning to wake. Asterisk, the bell tolled, slow and steady. Each ring stretched long, tearing through the silence. I followed the sound, barefoot gliding over cold stone. Not knowing how long I walked, darkness thickened all around. But ahead, a thin streak of light, like a thread, began to appear. The figures in the waiting room, Ellen, Marissa, Victor, no longer stood still. They were drifting, not walking, but pulled in the same direction I was moving, like corpses drifting in an invisible current. Each time the bell tolled, a few of them vanished, dissolving into the void. Nora walked beside me, her voice low. When the 7th bell rings, the door will open. But once you get close, he will know. I asked, where is he? Nora didn't answer. She only tilted her head slightly, listening. Somewhere, a deep male voice echoed in my head. Harper, it's me, Caleb. I'm at the old Westford church. I think I've found it, I whispered back, hoping he could hear. I'm inside. There's a black stone door, 7 bell tolls. Caleb interrupted, breathing hard. I'm counting. Only 3 so far. Nora and I stepped out of the dense darkness. Before us, a giant standing stone, over 10 meters tall, black and polished smooth. Its surface carved with spirals matching the mark on Caleb's hand I once saw in the mirror. At the center of the stone, a large circular groove, and right in the middle, a faintly glowing spiral symbol, pulsing in time with the bell. I reached out and touched it, icy cold. On the other side, Caleb stood before the same stone, but in a completely different space. The chapel walls decayed, moonlight filtering through broken roof. He placed his hand on the circle from outside. At the exact moment our hands met through the stone, the 4th bell tolled. The stone trembled slightly, and light from the symbol began to spread. A laugh rang out, low and hoarse, echoing from both sides. Right place, right time. Elias Crow stepped from the shadows behind me, a long cloak trailing the ground, eyes glowing like embers. At Caleb's side, a blurry figure appeared, identical to him, perfectly mirroring every gesture. The final missing cycle, he said, and to who refused to disappear will be the perfect key. I wanted to step back, but black tendrils like roots sprouted at my feet, wrapping tightly around my ankles. Outside, Caleb was bound by the same thing, pulled close to the circles. Centered at the 5th bell tolled. The black stone began to crack. Part 3, the 6th bell rang, shaking my chest with its force. The black stone cracked deeper, red light flooding from the fissures, spreading the stench of raw metal. Caleb looked at me through the crack, his eyes fixed. If I don't get out, you have to run. No, I replied. We leave together. The 7th bell tolled. The ground split open, and the doorway widened into a gigantic gate. No pure white light, or pure darkness, just a swirling void, deep as infinity, pulling everything in. Both Caleb and I were yanked violently, weightless, falling into the deep shadow. Here, there was no direction, only a glassy liquid ground, reflecting countless fragmented images. Ellen collapsing in the hospital corridor, Marissa lost in the basement, Victor dragged through a mirror, Nora sitting still by the typewriter. They all seemed suspended between 2 breaths. Elias stood in the middle of a giant ritual circle, his face serene, like one who had won from the start. Every story you live, every death you witness, is just a piece of this chessboard. 6 souls to unlock, and 2 resistors to keep the gate open. Caleb roared, "Why me?" "Because you saw the circle and survived. A defect. I want to fix it by sending you back to the right place." I noticed the circle's center bore a large spiral symbol, identical to Caleb's hand mark, but more complete, glowing dark red. Each beat made all surrounding souls tremble. I turned to Caleb. "If you destroy this symbol, the door will close." He looked at me, then at the spiral on his hand. No words were needed. I knew he was determined. He stepped straight into the circle's center, ignoring the black tendrils shooting up to coil around his legs. Elias shouted, his voice losing calm for the first time. "If you do that, you will be erased forever." Caleb looked back at me, better than letting him erase the whole town. He placed his hand on the symbol. The spiral on his hand flared brilliant white, then exploded into light, spreading across the deep shadow. The figures around me began to dissolve into the light, no longer held back. Elias screamed, his form fading. "You think? You've won, Harper, Quinn. Every circle has a new center." Light swallowed everything. I woke up, lying on the cold stone floor of Westford Chapel. The black stone door was gone. No Caleb, no one. I stepped outside. Dawn had come. The town was quiet, as if nothing had ever happened. I drove away, my hands still shaking. At a red light, I glanced in the rearview mirror. For a moment, my heart stopped. In the back seat, Elias Crow sat there, smiling faintly, his eyes glowing red like burning coals.